Ever get that feeling? You know when a song just hits you, like right there, deep in your gut,
Yeah.
and you get goosebumps all over.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what we're diving into today.
Okay.
This intriguing idea of spirit chords from that book. It's called Spirit Chords by Kraft.
Yeah, and what I really liked about that book is, and he doesn't just like use all this fancy musical jargon.
Right.
It goes into like the history, the science.
Yeah.
Even like looks at the future of music.
Mm-hmm.
All to kind of get to the bottom of why is it that certain combinations of sounds can make us feel things so intensely.
Okay, so let's unpack this whole spirit chords concept.
Okay.
It kind of reminds me of, I was reading about this, how the ancient Greeks believed that musical scales could actually influence a person's personality.
Oh, wow.
Like imagine listening to like a power playlist and you become braver or bolder just because of the music.
I mean, the ancient Greeks were onto something there, right? They had this system of scales, or what they called modes, and each mode was associated with certain character traits.
Okay.
So like the Dorian mode, they thought that evoked courage and strength.
Huh.
While the Phrygian mode, they linked that to like frenzy or like emotional intensity.
So are you saying that like today's film composers are kind of like channeling the ancient Greeks when they use certain types of music to make us feel brave during like a hero's journey or like anxious and on edge during a suspenseful scene?
It's like musical history echoing through time.
Wow.
Because, I mean, these ancient modes, right, with their unique intervals and arrangements of notes, they formed the basis of Western music theory as we know it.
Right.
And so while we don't necessarily think about music dictating our personalities quite so literally today, I think those underlying emotional connections, they're still there.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does it actually work?
Right.
Like, how can a bunch of notes make us feel things so deeply? I mean, it feels kind of magical almost.
Well, there's a really fascinating science to it.
Okay.
It all starts with sound waves.
Okay.
These vibrations.
Right.
They travel through the air, they reach our ears. Our brains then have to process those vibrations and interpret them as sound.
Right.
But, and here's where it gets really interesting, those sound waves, they also create physical responses in our bodies.
Really?
Our heart rate might speed up, we might get chills, even our brainwave patterns can shift.
Wow.
All in response to certain frequencies and combinations of sounds.
So it's like our bodies have this built-in resonance with music.
Precisely. And that's what I think Kraft is tapping into with his concept of spirit chords.
Okay.
He argues that certain musical intervals, so the distances between notes, and the way that those intervals are arranged into chords and progressions, that they can trigger these physiological responses more powerfully than others.
You said intervals and progressions. Can we like break those down a little bit?
Of course.
I'll admit, like music theory is not my strong suit.
So an interval, imagine playing two notes on the piano, one after the other.
Okay.
The distance between those two notes, that's the interval.
Gotcha.
Some intervals just sound naturally pleasing to our ears or harmonious, while others might sound dissonant or tense.
Okay.
Now a chord is basically three or more notes played together.
Okay.
And a progression is simply a series of chords played one after the other.
Okay.
So what Kraft is arguing is that the specific combination of intervals within those chords and the way that those chords move from one to the next, that's what gives these spirit chords their power.
So it's like a recipe. You're using the right ingredients combined in just the right way to create something amazing.
Absolutely.
Are there any like examples from the book that really illustrate this idea of intervals and progressions?
Yeah, so the book uses a really interesting example. Think about a minor chord versus a major chord.
Okay.
So a minor chord, that tends to evoke a sense of sadness or longing, while a major chord often sounds brighter and happier, right?
Yeah.
And that difference in emotional quality actually comes down to a single interval within the chord being shifted by a half step.
Wow, so just a tiny shift.
A tiny shift.
Can make a huge difference in how we experience the music emotionally.
Exactly.
And Kraft believes that these emotional chords are present in all kinds of music, not just like classical symphonies and things like that.
That's what's so fascinating about it, is that he uses examples from all across the musical spectrum.
Oh, wow.
So you've got classical composers like Bach and Beethoven who are masters of using these techniques.
Yeah.
All the way to modern day pop songs and film scores.
Okay, so now I'm dying to know, what are some specific techniques that like musicians use to say, make us feel a certain way.
Yeah.
How do they actually put these spirit chords to work?
It's like they have this whole toolkit.
Yeah.
All these different techniques they can use to kind of evoke specific emotions in the listener. So like, think about a soaring melody, right? Something that climbs higher and higher.
Yeah.
That often creates a sense of hope or triumph.
Right.
Or a sudden shift from a major key to a minor key.
Yeah.
Which can like instantly inject this feeling of unease or tension.
Like in a horror movie.
Exactly.
When the music gets all like
yeah,
dark and ominous and you're like,
right,
something bad's about to happen.
And those techniques often go hand in hand with these spirit chords.
Okay.
So for instance, a composer might use a minor chord progression with a really slow tempo and a mournful instrument like a cello to create like a truly heart-wrenching moment in the film score.
It's amazing how these like subtle musical choices can have such a huge impact on how we experience something visually.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to the power of music as this universal language of emotion.
Right.
Like we may not all be able to, you know, analyze a chord progression or identify a Phrygian mode.
Right. But we can all like feel the emotional weight that music carries.
Yeah. Like we're wired for it. Like it's part of our existence. So if we're all kind of walking around with this innate understanding of like emotional chords, does that mean that anyone can learn to compose music that like really moves people?
I think that's what's so empowering about Kraft's message.
Okay.
Is that he believes that anyone can learn to recognize and even harness these spirit chords.
Okay.
The book is full of exercises and practical tips for like identifying these powerful combinations of sounds just in your everyday listening.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
But where do you even begin? Like someone's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I love music, but like music theory is kind of scary.
Yeah.
What would be a good first step towards understanding these spirit chords in action?
I think it all starts with active listening.
Okay.
So start paying attention to how music makes you feel.
When you hear a song you love, just ask yourself, what instruments are being used? What's happening with the melody? Does it rise and fall, or does it stay in a narrow range?
Okay.
Are the chords changing quickly, or is there this slower, more deliberate progression?
Oh, like that.
Yeah.
It's like a treasure hunt for your ears.
Exactly.
And speaking of treasure hunts, I'm curious about this other thing from the book.
Yeah.
Kraft talks about how these spirit chords, they're not just a thing of the past.
Yeah.
They're evolving right alongside technology. Like, we have AI that can compose music now. So does that mean that, like, algorithms can understand and replicate these deep emotional connections?
It really makes you think, right? Like, can AI really understand those nuances of human emotion and then translate that into music that really gets to us on that deep level?
Yeah.
I mean, some people say yes.
Okay.
Because, you know, AI learns by analyzing these massive data sets of existing music, which includes, you know, all those emotional chords that we've been talking about.
Okay.
So the thinking is that, it can kind of pick up on those patterns and replicate them.
But then there's that, like, counter argument that, like, you know, true emotional depth in music comes from lived experience. It comes from the composer's own, like, of feelings and emotions. So.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Like, can an algorithm really understand what it means?
Yeah.
To feel heartbreak or joy or longing?
Yeah.
Or is it just mimicking those patterns that it's observed in human created music?
It really makes you wonder, like, what's going to happen as this AI music gets even more, you know, sophisticated and advanced?
Right. Will these emotional chords almost become like even more potent because they're so tailored, you know?
Yeah.
Like almost like a musical fingerprint. Or will there always be something unique and irreplaceable, you know, about human creativity?
Right.
That spark of something real and raw that an algorithm can't quite replicate.
It's almost a philosophical question in a way, you know?
It is.
Like, what is it about music that truly moves us? Is it the technical, you know, mastery of these spirit chords, or is it something more?
Right.
You know, like something intangible that, like, connects us to the heart of the composer?
Those are the questions I think that Kraft really makes you grapple with in the book. And to me, that's the real power of it. You know? It's not just a music theory lesson. It's really about like going deeper into our relationship with music itself.
So I guess as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into spirit chords, what's the key takeaway that you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
You know, I always come back to listening with intention.
Okay.
So the next time that a song gives you goosebumps or you feel a tear welling up, don't just let the feeling wash over you. Like, stop for a second and think, like, what is it about this music?
Yeah.
These specific combinations of sounds that are creating that emotional response within me.
It's like he's giving us these new set of ears to hear the music in a whole new light.
Exactly. And whether you're like a seasoned musician or just starting to explore the world of music, I think that this book will give you such a deeper appreciation for the incredible power that sound has.
Absolutely.
To move us, to inspire us, to connect us to something larger than ourselves.
Really incredible. So to our listeners, if you want to unlock the secrets of spirit chords and like discover this hidden language of emotion that's kind of woven into the music you love, definitely check out Echo Kraft's book.
Absolutely.
It's a really fascinating journey.
It is.
That will absolutely change the way that you listen.
For sure.
To music forever. So until next time, keep those ears open and keep exploring this incredible world of sound.